Hello again, everyone. Welcome back once again to the Online Language Pro Special Edition OnlyFans and Twitch Online Language Pro English class. Now, in this video, I'm going to be explaining the correct grammatical structure for sentences in English. So let's get right to it. Now, unlike many other languages, where you are able to say the same thing in many different ways, English is just not like that. In English, we have a very specific order of words for each sentence. Now, this is a rule in English that cannot be broken. So, okay, so here's how it goes, right? So the correct order of words in English are who, what, where, when, how, and why. So who, what, where, when, how, and why. Now, it would do you very good to memorize this. Who, what, where, when, how, and why. Now, these are not the same as the question words of what they represent. This is just a very easy way to remember the order. Now, who actually represents the subject of the sentence. Now, we always begin our sentences with the subject. Now, whether that's the subject is me or you or this pen or the weather, it doesn't matter, okay? Now, so next with the what represents the verb, so the action, plus any objects involved, okay? Now, next, we have the points of reference. Now, these are either where or when, space or time. So where represents either the place or what we call the state. Now, what do I mean by that? The state is a state of mind or a state of being. For example, if happy is an emotion, happiness is the state. Okay, so moving on. Next, we have when. Now, this represents the time or date. Then we have how, which represents the method something is done, the way in which it is done. And then why, the reason. Okay, so let's put these into their correct positions here. Now, what we need to remember is that in English, we must always follow this order. We must always go in this direction. Now, your sentence does not need to use all of these things. You can use as many or as little, as few as you want, but they must go in this order. For example, your sentence may have who, what, where, when, how, and why. Okay. Maybe your sentence has where, how, why. Okay. Or who, when. Okay. But to say what, where, who, never. We cannot do this. Think, for example, a sentence like, I went to the beach yesterday. Fair enough. Simple sentence. Let's mix up the words. The beach went yesterday. That doesn't make any sense. Where did the beach go? You see what I mean? So we must follow a very specific sentence order. Now, another thing to remember is this is the order for each sentence. So when you begin a new sentence, we have to go back to the beginning of the order. So let me give you an example, a very easy example here. Brian didn't come to school today. All right, let's end that sentence there. So we can see here, we have the subject is Brian. The action didn't come. Where? To school. When? Today. Okay. Now, this is obviously a very simple and easy example. Now, this is a simple sentence. And we obviously don't speak like this. Brian didn't come to school today. Brian is not going to get a good grade. Brian, blah, blah, blah. No, obviously not. Now, what we do to connect these sentences together is we use these words called connectors or linking words. Right? Now, these are words like and, or, if, so, although, because. Now, what's important to remember, in English, each sentence tells its own story. It's actually the connectors that set the path of the story and how the sentences relate to each other. Now, so we use connectors or linkers to join sentences, but to separate them, we use punctuation. Punctuation like we have here after today with a full stop, or perhaps a comma, or an exclamation point, or a question mark. So let's adjust this sentence here to make it a little more complicated. So let's look at this sentence in its entirety. All right, let's try to move this over here a little bit. There we go. So Brian didn't come to school today because he is ill. So he will call me later for the homework. So now take a look at this sentence and try to figure out how many sentences do I have here? So if you answered 3, that is a correct answer. So what we need to do is find our connectors. So here we have because and so. Now we can see that these are our connectors because of the position of our subject. We see here at the beginning of each new sentence, we went back to the beginning of the word order and the sentence structure. So we have Brian didn't come to school today. Okay, so there's our first. Then, because he is the verb to be, and in this case, we have an example of a state of mind, a state of being, to be ill. Then another connector, reset the order. So here again, we have who, what, where, again, a state. The concept of me is a state of consciousness. When and why. So you can see here we followed the sentence structure. The only thing we didn't use is how, but that's okay. Now, let's remove these. So now there are confusing things here, right? Sometimes we do verbally say things like, yesterday I went to the beach. Now, it's true that this does not necessarily follow the correct sentence structure. Let's put a full stop in there. So, but spoken English and written English is different because the correct way to say this sentence is, yesterday I went to the beach. What we don't say is, yesterday I went to the beach. Let's listen to the difference. Yesterday, I went to the beach, compared to yesterday I went to the beach. See, what we have here is we are out of order because we have when, who, what, where. Now, this is not necessarily incorrect. It's just written incorrectly. What we need here after yesterday is a comma. Now, so what we've done is we've now correctly separated our sentences. Our first sentence contains just one of these variables, when, and we do this to create a setting, right? So yesterday, comma, then back to the beginning of the sentence order, I with the subject went to the beach, okay? So now in storytelling, we do this all the time to create a setting. For example, Spain, 1492. Columbus, right? And because that puts us in that setting of in that place and time, everything following that would be in the present. Okay, so one more thing. Friday is the best day of the week. Now, what do we have here? See, this is a little bit different because now Friday is not the time. It's not when. Friday is the subject. We are speaking about Fridays as a subject, not as a reference of time. So Friday is the best day of the week is a completely perfect sentence. Now, this rule is absolutely crucial to remember. You must. If you are not following this sentence structure, you are grammatically incorrect. So in your writing, in your speaking, if you ever find yourself, oof, that I don't think that's right, it doesn't sound right, the first thing you should do is check your sentence structure to who, what, where, when, how, and why, and make sure that your words are in the correct position. 90% of the time, this will probably be your mistake.